Hey everybody, welcome to BK's Bullets. Today we're talking Deathnote on Netflix and fan expectations. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. I'm your host, Brent, and I wanted to talk to you today about the Deathnote movie that came out on Netflix this previous Friday, August 25th, 2017. If you're watching later, it's there. Go watch it. At this time, I think the anime series is also on Netflix, so you can check that out as well if you want to revisit it, or if you want to check it out after you watch the movie, if you like it or don't like it, whatever. So, first and foremost, let's get into Deathnote review. I've never watched Deathnote. I've never watched the anime, the Japanese subtitled or, subbed or whatever. And I've never read the manga. I know there's a lot of anime episodes. I know there's a lot of manga volumes about Deathnote. All I know is there's a guy with a notebook and some demon and stuff ensues. So I was excited when Netflix announced that they were going to do this Deathnote movie. So, not knowing anything about it, I turned it on last Friday. I watched it. It was about an hour and 45 minutes or so. And, I thought it was okay. I enjoyed watching it, having nothing in the background of my head. Going into it fully clean, no expectations whatsoever. Just knowing that Netflix has a tendency to at least have some good Netflix original content. Haven't really watched any original movies of theirs, but I have watched a lot of their original series. We were just talking about The Defenders the other day. But I liked it. You had this guy named Light. He discovers a notebook. The notebook comes with some weird demon death god thing, and who basically kills anybody he writes in the notebook as long as he can picture their face and write their full name. And, he can say how they die or how they don't die. And there's also some sort of weird, I can control you kind of thing that he can do. I was really interested in the rules of the Deathnote. Apparently there's at least 95 rules. I think they quoted Rule 95 at one time. And I was like, man, what are these rules? This would be really interesting. So I'm assuming that's what the manga and the series go into. All the different rules of the Deathnote, how you can use it, how you can't use it. Anyway, so he starts, killing some people he doesn't like or he thinks deserve it. And then he comes across this guy named L. And there's no backstory to him given at all in the film. He just kind of appears. He's kind of this super detective, this modern day Sherlock Holmes. And he comes in and, starts challenging Light. Somehow figures out that Light is the son of the detective that he's working with to find out who this guy killing everybody is. I think he goes by the name Kira when he's killing people, or somehow it gets this demon to write the name. That is totally unclear. So anyway, they confront each other. Mayhem ensues. Light's got a girlfriend who he lets know what's going on, and they kind of decide together who they're going to kill and don't kill. And there were some plot twists in there that I kind of liked, kind of didn't like. Didn't really make sense on why the girlfriend did some of the things she did. I'm trying to stay relatively spoiler-free here. But in the end, I enjoyed it. I would definitely watch another Deathnote movie that took place after this one. I had no issues with the casting. I thought the demon god, they had a practical suit that looked pretty good. And from my understanding, they had some a mask on his face or something like that. And some of that was CG. Ryuk, I think, is the death god's name. And the voice was done by, I'm blanking on his name, the Green Goblin from Spider-Man. Norman Osborn. Oh man. Willem Dafoe. Thank you for waiting for me. So Willem Dafoe definitely has a menacing voice, and he definitely lent it to this character. I don't know what he sounds like in the Japanese adaptation, so if it was spot on or whatever, but it was definitely creepy as hell in this movie. So thumbs up to Willem Dafoe. Did a great job, I thought. But as far as the actual effect went, it kind of worked. The design, it looked like, I think, what I had seen in some of the anime screenshots I've seen before. Spot for spot, but sometimes when you do that and then you translate it into 3 dimensions or into computer generation, it doesn't quite translate, and that's why sometimes changes need to be made. It works better on a flat page or a flat anime drawing or whatever, animation, than it does in 3D. So I don't think they made any changes in terms of that, and it just kind of looked a little flat. And definitely a little jarring, which is, I think, why, also the budgetary reasons too, probably why they didn't show him as often as maybe the anime does. There were a lot of shots of Ryuk from the back or the side, or, drenched in darkness, and all you could see were his glowing eyes and his silhouette, which worked very well. So, I can't really complain about that, other than, obviously, it seemed like there were some budget things going on there. Because when you did see him, he didn't look as good as he probably should have or could have. So, Death Note, I'd give it 3.5, 3 out of 5 stars. I would definitely recommend it to people who haven't seen anything from Death Note before. Definitely recommend it. If you like Final Destination, if you like those movies, you'll like this one. If you like The Punisher, you'll probably like this one. And, go from there. So it's kind of comic book related, which is why I was talking about it. But I really wanted to talk about the Death Note movie because I watched it and I liked it and I posted on Facebook about it. And then some of my, comic book circle friends, didn't quite like it. And, whether they watched the whole thing or didn't watch the whole thing, it was just kind of like, I was reading all of their comments and taking some of them in stride, and some of them I was just kind of writing off because, some of them didn't watch the whole thing and they just wanted to write it off, which is, I think, is okay. If you decide that you don't want to watch something because you respect too much or love too much the original source material, it is totally okay if you do not want to watch something. Nobody's going to force you and say, you need to watch this new adaptation, so help you God, or anything like that. The Dark Tower movie, I love the books. I have the comic books and stuff like that. I love those. I think they're great. Peter David, Jay Lee did a great job on that initial run. And Stephen King did a great job in the books. I really like those books. But the Dark Tower movie didn't speak to me. So I didn't rush out and go see it. Now, will I watch it when it comes out on Blu-ray? Rental, streaming, whatever? Who knows? Maybe. I'm not going to rush out and... It's not something I listed as, that's a rental versus a go see in the theater movie. But I know though, when I do watch that film, to go into it with low expectations. I'm not going into it as this is the be-all, end-all. I mean, after all, I'm looking towards my bookshelf over here, there are 7 books in that series, and some of them are close to 1,000 pages long. So, quick math, 7,000 pages is not going to be distilled into one movie, much less if they just do the first book. From the Dark Tower series, The Gunslinger. When I read that book was terrible, in my opinion. I barely got through it, and I just started the next one because I think I had 2 or 3 at the time that I'd purchased them in a row because I had heard that this was a good series. But that first book was terrible. The writing was terrible. It was Stephen King's first work he had ever written, and it definitely showed. But, I'm not going to go into the movie thinking that it's going to be terrible because that book was terrible. There's a different team behind it, writers, artists, production designers, costumers, actors, producers. There's a whole different team producing the film as opposed to the one guy who produced the book. So I'm definitely going to anything that I see with a clear separation, if you can get what I'm talking about, between, expectations based off what I know and expectations based off what I've seen on trailers or what I want that movie or adaptation to be. There's never going to be a perfect adaptation. Maybe you could say 300 was a perfect adaptation. It was like shot for shot the exact same thing, but did it help it or hurt it? That film with Gerard Butler, directed by Zack Snyder, it's tough to say. So, I think setting your expectations going into one of these beloved franchises is very, very important. There's a lot of outcry about Death Note, that they moved it from Japan, which is the anime and manga setting, into Seattle, which is the movie setting. I don't know whether or not that's okay. It doesn't bother me because, like I said, I haven't seen it. But I think if you're going to adapt something, if you have a vision for it, if you have, location constraints, if you have budget constraints, you probably need to reflect those in your setting and in your script. And if that's something that they had to do here as the filmmakers, I think that's perfectly acceptable. If Netflix was like, we're going to give you $65 million to make this movie, you know, your total running time can be anything you want as long as it fits within that. And then they walked back the budget with how many effect shots they're going to have. The finale definitely was very effects heavy. You know, you have this demon god that has an effect every time he appears on screen and other things like that. I mean, other than those things, it was probably a very cheap movie to make, but you know, those things do cost money. So if you had to look at that and say, okay, do we want to film in Japan? What does it cost to film in Japan? You know, how many you know, permits do we have to get? This is all stuff you go into when you're making a film. My wife does television down here in Florida, and she's a producer, and she worries about all that stuff. So I know what goes into at least producing a commercial or something like that. I imagine it's a far bigger difficulty to do a film. So if you've got your budget constraints and they go, well, we can shoot it in Vancouver or Seattle for this amount of money, and then you have the rest to spend on your actors, your script, your effects budget, I would definitely be like, okay, that's a sacrifice we have to make in order to make the adaptation that, you know, that director or producer sees in their head. So I know it sounds like I'm justifying decisions that were made that other people took issue with. You know, why are we taking Japanese characters and making them white or black? Elle was Japanese, I think, in the manga, anime. No race depicted other than if it takes place in Japan. I'm guessing you're assuming he's Japanese. But here he was played by a black actor who you might have seen in Get Out, Lakeith. I can't remember his last name, I'm sorry. But he was a great actor. I really liked him in that part. I definitely want to see more from that actor. So I think they accomplished something good there. But definitely I think you need to go into stuff, if you love it, with some tempered expectations. I definitely went into Batman v Superman with high expectations. And when I came out of it, my expectations were so low. I was just so disappointed, so upset that that is the final product we got delivered. But I think some of that came because I was so excited about the previews, and I was so excited about the quality of the film, and I liked Man of Steel. But when it came down to it, my expectations were so high that they couldn't be met. And I think when you're looking at adaptations, if your expectations are so high that you automatically want to smash and, you know, talk bad about something, or you automatically, you know, it's fine if you don't want to watch it. It's totally fine if you don't want to watch it. But that doesn't mean you should say something about it. All you should say is, I've decided I'm not going to watch it because I love this other thing or this original piece of it so much that I know it will not meet my expectations. And I don't want to do that to myself. And just say that. I don't think you should, you know, that's all you should say. Because technically, if you haven't seen something or if you haven't watched the whole thing, on what leg do you have to stand on to critique it, I guess? You know, if you only saw the first 20 minutes, probably you could critique the first 20 minutes, but I don't think you should be able to critique the film as a whole. You know, I definitely don't want somebody grading my whole essay in high school off the first paragraph. Some teachers may do that, but I definitely put a lot of hard work in those things back in the day. I don't want to be judged on that. I definitely don't want to be judged on my personality or quality at work based off of, you know, my first 2 years there. I was learning a lot, and I'm a much better worker today than I was, you know, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So I think if you're going to critique something, you at least need to watch the whole thing, read the whole thing, or as much as you can, unless it's so terrible like the Emoji Movie. Maybe that's my one pass. But definitely, if it's getting okay reviews, I don't, you know, like this Deathnote movie is getting okay reviews in some places. You shouldn't be allowed to just say, oh, it's a piece of shit, I couldn't watch the whole thing, and blah, blah, I'm assuming it's bad, blah, blah. It's like, you didn't watch the whole thing. So that's why I'm saying you're allowed to not watch something, but if you make that decision, fucking stick to it. Because nobody wants to hear your whining and bitching. Anyway, that's my piece. Sorry. Hope you enjoyed this review. If you like me covering these other, you know, kind of stringent comic booky stuff, let me know. If you disagree with me on Deathnote, if you watched the whole thing and thought it was total trash, let me know. If you decided not to watch it and still think you should be able to slam it as a, you know, anonymous internet commenter, let me know. Let's have it out in the bottom. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the funny pages.